I always hear about the elite. You know, the elite, they're elite.
In the world of Donald Trump, if you're part of the media or an intellectual, you're a target.
I went to better schools than they did. I was a better student than they were. I live in a bigger, more beautiful apartment, and I live in the White House, too, which is really great.
The so-called elites have been blamed for just about everything.
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you stay categorical?
You are fake news.
In Trump's world, Adam Gopnik is about as elite as they come. He's a journalist. He believes in man-made climate change.
There should be no more politics of climate change than there are politics of bubonic plague.
And he's based in New York. If that isn't enough, he's even got Canadian roots. But Gopnik says the Trump team has the wrong target. He says elites aren't really at the root of the current American divide, that something much more basic is going on. I met up with Adam Gopnik earlier in Toronto. Adam, so nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, Wendy.
So you grew up in Canada.
In Montreal, indeed.
You live in the States.
I do, indeed.
So can you explain what's going on in American politics to us Canadians?
I struggle to explain it to myself. It's a national emergency. Hard to laugh at it, really, though we try to. What's happening is, I think, is the mistake I think we might make, everybody might make, is to think of it as being a thing unto itself. It's part of a larger cycle that began with the Obama administration. Now, to a lot of us, to me particularly, Barack Obama seemed like a model of reason, calm, eloquence, rationality. But clearly, to a large number of white Americans, he seemed like a huge threat to their basic identity. And when people feel their identity threatened, however irrationally, and it's an irrational emotion, they respond in a very tribal way.
So you think it's about race? Because that is a theme that keeps coming back.
Yeah, I do. Race oversimplifies it in the sense that it's not that everybody who supports Donald Trump is a racist who hates black people. But I think that the wave of support for Donald Trump comes out of this sense that our tribe is threatened. Our tribe is being displaced. You don't necessarily have to hate the people who are displacing you to feel a sense of panic at your own displacement. And that, I do think is the core emotion that drives the crazy forward.
There's this whole debate about Colin Kaepernick and kneeling. It's become much, much larger. It seems as if the president is fanning those flames. Why?
Fanning the flames, he created the fire. I mean, that's when people say that we try to use our normal vocabulary of description when it comes to Trump. We say, oh, he's fanning the flames, he's taking a controversial stand. There was no fire before he started it. There was no stand before he created the controversy.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
I don't think he has any plan, I don't think he has any strategy. He's simply a man with no conscience and with no normal human feelings of empathy. So he's incapable of putting himself in anybody else's position. He only understands domination in a very primitive way, and that's what he tries to do. In this case, it's clear that it's real plantation mentality talking. However you feel, and we could argue back and forth about
patriotism is his argument.
But he wasn't talking about patriotism. What he said when he spoke in Alabama was, you people can see that those people are not behaving properly. They hate our country. Now, who the you people was is clear. It was white Alabamans. Who the those people was, perfectly clear. Black athletes. So this whole thing was pitched on that, on a racial basis.
So where's this heading? Are things going to get better or worse?
I think that the good news is, if there's any good news in this ongoing emergency, is that the civic resources of the United States have proven to be stronger than some of us thought they would be. The people just have been showing more nerve when LeBron James writes a tweet that begins, "You bum." Now, that's not something that Chuck Schumer, that's not something that politicians would typically do, but it's something that comedians and athletes, swimsuit models have found and been readier to do. And I think it's great when you see that kind of nerve being shown by a guy like LeBron James. And I think that in a broader level, you can see that the capacity to protest and resist remains very, very strong.
The word white supremacist is being thrown around a lot lately. Is he a white supremacist?
Of course he's a white supremacist. I mean, it's one of those, one can ask the question, does he actually believe in it, or does he just find it useful to say? Because he's a man who doesn't actually believe in anything. He came to note politically on birtherism. Birtherism was the single most vile racist campaign that anyone could have. It was based on the totally lying pretense that the first black president was not an American. That's what it was.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate?
Now all we have to do is find out whether or not it was real.
You don't take up a cause like birtherism unless you are either a racist yourself or completely oblivious to the hateful effects of racism. There are countless, millions of Republicans who, a scant 8 months ago, knew far better, knew much better than this, never would have been associated with this kind of slime. But there's this horrible thing that happens when the world becomes tribalized, and that is that you side with your tribe even when you know your tribe is wrong. And that's what I think is going on in American right-wing politics now. A lot of people know just how bad this guy is. They know how bad and hateful these kinds of statements are, but they're frightened. They hate liberals so much more than they love their own principles, that it warps their judgment.
When Trump was first elected, a lot of the media had said there's no way it's going to be Hillary Clinton. They were attacked for that, and they were also attacked for not identifying with all of the people in the flyover states, as they became known, and the hard times that they were going through. But now race has become an issue. Well, at the time, everyone was saying, well, it's about economic hardship, and that no one else was listening.
I was not saying that, because anyone who had studied the issues shouldn't have said that, because it was never about economic hardship. There was never any correlation between economic distress and people who supported Trump. People who supported Trump were people who supported the Republican Party. There's no correlation between those two things, and it just was a myth that was created largely by the people on the East Coast who were trying to understand, trying to empathize with the elites created in an effort to empathize with the pathos of the Trump supporters. That was never an issue. You know, the same thing happened in the 1960s in the United States.
Sweet land of liberty.
You had enormous social change, and it ended with the Nixon years, which were a reaction, very similar in lots of ways to this one, to a period of intense social change.
So where are the Democrats going to go? What happens now, or is there a third party?
I think one of the striking things, and you have to be honest about it, is that the official leadership of the Democratic Party, the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's worthy people, have been remarkably ineffective in countering Trump. And sort of the counter-establishment, from LeBron James through Jimmy Kimmel, have been far more effective. And this is one of the most striking things of this past year, is how effective the non-official liberal voices have been.
We have a major problem with gun violence in this country, and I guess they don't care. And if I'm wrong on that, fine, do something about it, because I'm sick of it.
And I suspect that just as Trump rose from the non-official voices of the Republican Party, I suspect that the next leader of liberalism in the country will rise from the unexpected reaches of it.
You grew up in Canada?
I did indeed.
One huge difference between Canada and the US is the belief in man-made climate change. How do you explain that? Like, in whose interest is it to deny man-made climate change?
The answer is, and this is one of the most frightening things that's happened in the United States, is that issues become tribalized, as I was saying before. In other words, the reason to oppose, and you hear people saying this, right? The reason you oppose the idea of global warming, despite the overwhelming evidence of its taking place, is because Al Gore believes in it. It's because you would rather frustrate and bedevil your tribal opponent. You'd rather frustrate and bedevil liberals than protect your own grandchildren, children, and it's become a narrower time frame than that, than protect your own children from bad consequences. When your politics become part of your identity rather than part of your ideas, then that always happens, and it's a disaster.
It's been great to talk to you, Adam.
Pleasure talking to you, Wendy.
Thank you.